Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. All right, welcome back to Coach Soul. Oh my gosh, Tony, I really appreciate the insight that you gave, because oftentimes I think as adults who have children, we forget what it's like as a child, what we put our children through, especially when we divorce and then we remarry. And it's like, how do we bring the children in? But here you are. You're California. Your mom, is moved back. You're with this family. You talked a little bit as we ended your siblings and the age difference. How did the blended family work for you from the time that they got married? The siblings are now at home until you graduated from high school.
Well, again, it's great to be back here. Thank you again. And it worked out. Look, at the beginning, 6th, 7th grade, it was an adjustment. As I said, I was very, very happy to have an older brother. And I would kind of hang around him. He was a big gearhead. He had an old 1946 Ford, kind of a jalopy, and I'd hang out with him and his friends as they worked on the car out in the street. He was a sailor. He had a thistle and then a catamaran, a small catamaran called a Wildcat. And I crewed for him, except I got seasick. One time he couldn't start a race because I got so seasick. He had to come back into port. He was not happy about that. Leslie, the sister, as I said, that took more of an adjustment. I remember having a party and not wanting her there, which was sad.
Yeah.
I had it from my I think it was my 7th or 8th grade friends in school. And I just said, I don't want her there. She spent the evening up in the bedroom, But once we got into high school, we never had a party without each other there, without each other's friends there. In fact, one of her friends married one of my friends, and they're still married. So there you go.
Very unique story.
Yeah, she almost married one of my very close high school friends. So, I call that, as I said in the last show, a success story. It was great having siblings. It was something I had wanted before.
So you're very fortunate to have this route, to graduate. And what was the determining factor that, hey, I want to do law?
I probably just backed into it. I liked debate. When I got into high school, immediately I wanted to join the debating society. I like to write. I got involved in writing for the school paper and became one of the editors-in-chief of the school paper. So Everybody said, look, you like to write, you like to talk, be a lawyer. I didn't know any. The family knew some lawyers, but I really didn't know them or get to know them. Although there were God knows how many lawyers, in Beverly Hills, and their kids were all over the high school. Their parents were either lawyers, doctors, or celebrities or studio executives. That seemed to be the way it went, or real estate barons. That was Beverly Hills back then. It was a different world, but a very interesting world and a very kind of insular world, if you will.
So here you become an attorney. You're able to see two different perspectives, two different worlds, as you shared in the first part of our Coach Soul podcast. Mm-hmm. One of the things that comes to mind is, like, for me, talking off mic, how I became a therapist was due to my own divorce and so forth, and finding out I didn't become a lawyer. I just had enough of the court system. I was done. But here you are, become this attorney. Did you ever get into family law because of what happened to your situation?
I tried to avoid family law because of what happened in my situation. I think I did 1 or 2 divorce cases as a lawyer. I found them very distasteful. I remember one, I was deposing the husband and I was being rough with him, and he broke into tears and he looked at his wife who was sitting next to me, and he was pleading with her to come back, and she was yelling at him. It just wasn't pleasant at all. And my parents' divorce was not a screaming divorce. They were very civil with each other. Underneath, there were some problems because there were lawyer letters going back and forth, which again I never read until I was, in my 60s. But in front of me, there really wasn't a problem. But I just didn't enjoy divorce cases at all. And then when I became a judge, I very fortunately was never assigned to the family law courts. I would have done it had they asked me to, because when you become a judge, you're the new kid on the block. You go where the presiding judge wants you to go. But the good news is the presiding judge never sent me to family law. I did one time when I was handling civil. I did get a family law case because the court commissioner who handled them did not. He was, quote, non-SIP. The lawyers didn't want him. So I get the case and I look at this thing, and A, I don't know anything about family law. B, I don't want to know anything about family law. C, I don't want this case. So I sat down and I read it, and I brought the attorneys in and I said, it's really too bad that you did not stipulate to Commissioner such and so, because I don't know anything about family law. So you're going to have to write me a brief telling me every issue and what the law is on every issue in this case, so I can walk you through it and make sure I'm fair and do the right thing. But I really need to know from scratch what there is. The next day they settled. I never had another family law case in my life. I take that back. I sat on loan in the Court of Appeal. Okay. And I did do one or two family law appeals. The good news is you have law clerks to help you out there. And the issues seem pretty straightforward. I was able to grasp them and take care of them. And the appeals went without a hitch.
Tony, if you don't mind humoring me for a little bit, because sure. I think this is a critical moment for our listeners who have to go before judges. There's that fear. The judges are really hard-fisted. And just talking with you in this podcast, you don't come across as hard-fisted. There's I know that attorneys and lawyers and judges have to go by with what the law is stated for. If a family case came before you, or somebody's going before a judge, or a divorce, a hardship, what would be a piece of advice that would help them to feel better, if they could feel better about having their case heard?
Okay, you may get some dogs barking in the background. I don't know if you heard that one. But in any case, all right. The best advice I can give you is the advice to the lawyer, which is be prepared. Because if you're prepared, the judge will appreciate it. And prepared lawyers make judges look good. We want a lawyer to be prepared. We appreciate it when lawyers are prepared. So even the hard-bitten, testy, crusty judges among us, and we have a few, are going to be appreciative when the lawyers know their stuff. So that would be the first thing. Make sure you have a good lawyer who is prepared to go into court. The worst thing that can happen is when you have a lawyer walking in there and they don't know the case, or they've been sent to cover a case for the lawyer who's really the principal, but the principal didn't want to come to court, so he sends somebody down who doesn't know anything about it. That gets us very exasperated and frustrated, and conceivably we could lose our temper. We try not to. It's interesting, when I was a kid and I would watch like Night Court on television, the judges were always old white men with a temper, almost invariably.
Right.
And I did have experiences with people like that when I first started to practice. I clerked for a judge who was an old white man with a temper and a lot of prejudices. He was not a popular judge. My law school didn't realize what kind of a bad reputation he had, or they would have steered me away from him. The clerkship was a very checkered experience, but that's a story for another day. But more and more now, the judges are decent people. I remember the presiding judge of our court about 3 years ago was talking with a number of people and said, we're much nicer now than judges used to be when we were lawyers. And Kevin was right. We are much nicer now than judges were 20, 25 years ago. We just are. The governor, at least in California, the governor is appointing, well-tempered, decent people on the bench. And the canons of judicial ethics, the code of judicial ethics, requires people to be courteous. You look at Canon 3, Canon 4. I'm not going to go and start citing canons to you.
Sure.
But abuse could get you disciplined, and serious abuse could almost get you removed from the bench. And I've seen it happen. So most of us are pretty patient. We try to be. I haven't lost my temper in a very, very long time. I think I did the first couple of years I was on the bench, but I haven't since. You learn to just roll with it. And if somebody's being a complete, jerk, you just kind of, okay, you're being a jerk. And, counsel, you're being a jerk. I don't know why you're being a jerk. Do you really think you can win your case because you're a jerk?
So that
you're not going to yell at me anymore, counsel.
Right.
Are you finished? You're not going to yell at me anymore. Okay, let's continue. And you just handle it that way.
Do you feel like not only did your upbringing give you some wisdom into, being a legal counsel, but here you are, this judge, and with these two melding together, how much did that influence the writing of your book in the way that you did with Every Other Weekend?
Well, when I wrote the book, I really didn't think in terms of writing about judging. I figured that's a topic for another book. But as the book moved along, and when you're writing, sometimes it's like driving in a fog. You're only seeing 200 feet ahead of you. You're not sure where the story's going to go.
Right.
The book does have points where I talk about becoming a judge. And it wasn't a career goal at the time. I never thought in high school or even in law school, I want to be a judge. It just kind of devolved, if you will. A couple of friends said, you ought to think about it. I got a phone call from a lawyer who said, I have somebody who knows the governor and we think you'd be good. And the next thing I knew, I was going through the process. They said it would take a year and a half before the appointment. It took a year and a half before the appointment. I put it in the book, basically saying at the beginning, I think I started with a session of student court, going to that and finding it to be nothing more than a kangaroo court. You're guilty until proven guilty. And then but toward the end, I talked about getting on the bench and becoming a judge. And at the time, I didn't have my parents anymore. I kind of wish I had.
Sure.
I had my stepfather, but not my real parents. And as I said to my stepfather, stick around. Judges need parents too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's wise counsel that seeks counsel to help with the wisdom in that piece, And so here you are writing this book. What were some of the things that were going through your mind writing this book that you said, okay, Every Other Weekend? What made the title Every Other Weekend when it could have been a different title?
We had a lot of trouble trying to get a title. A lot of trouble. The first title, the working title, was Father, Father. And a couple of my friends said, no, people are going to think you're writing a book about religion.
True. Yes.
So in any case, and then my editors and I went back and forth and around. And finally we hit Every Other Weekend, which is not an original title. There are a couple of novels by that name, but you cannot copyright a title. So I figured I'm going to use it. It works for the book, and then subtitle it Coming of Age with Two Different Dads. So that's how it happened. At least that's how the title occurred.
Sure.
Writing the book, initially I'd written a number of essays back and forth about my stepdad, about my father. I wrote one about my brother and his old broken down jalopy, although I didn't use that in the book. I used maybe 2 paragraphs and that was it. But as they piled up and they weren't in order, I said, this could work. It's almost like you make some index cards. You put one essay on a card, another on a card. You shuffle them, you put them in order, and you find, okay, this chapter should go here. This one's going to go there. You're halfway through the book. No, I'm going to move the chapter back over there. And ultimately, you write the book. And then you look at what's happening.
As a published author myself, it's those drafts that become painstaking because you've written all this, and it's like, okay, it seems to form. And your editor says, nope, we need to move some things around to make it more clear. So I understand this process. And here you are writing every other weekend, and you talk about your dads.
Yeah. Neither of which was alive at the time. By 2020, my father had been dead since 1968. My stepfather had been dead since 2013.
So how do you write something about your family? Because you still have your existing. So
I had my siblings on both sides, and they had read or I'd given them copies of some of the chapters, which were published essays, but they didn't get the full book until it was actually published. And that was just a decision I made. I could have gone the other way and sent it and said, okay, what do you think? But then you're getting feedback from them. It might change the narrative. It's your story. You want your story to be pure. So I made that decision not to expose the entire book. But they had seen a lot of it, and I had gotten reactions from them for a lot of it. So,
and then their reaction was, you're just crazy, or do they love what you wrote from your perspective?
As my stepsister's sitting actually in the room right now. She just folded her arms and she's smirking at me. If she wants, you can put her on the screen if you want. I could even ask her, what'd you think?
We thought the book was better written than we expected.
Did you hear that?
I did. The book was well written than expected.
Better written than they expected. And Skip, my stepbrother, said the same thing. That it was.
We really liked it.
They really liked it. Okay.
There were a few things we might have questions about.
Yeah, I'm sure there were a few things that Leslie might have questioned here and there.
So there you go, listeners. A judge has already been judged by his family, and that's it. Order to court, right? We're
like that, right?
Right. So that is awesome that you have the support. You got this book. It's out there. As an author, you're exposing your life out there, talking, and there's so many people that I come across that have not written their story. What would be some advice for those who are wanting to write a story, and then the repercussions of your info is out there and you can't get it back?
Well, the first thing you want to ask is, if you're going to write your story, who's your audience? Are you writing the story for your own family and not to go beyond that? Or do you want to sell the book? Is this going to be a mass market publication and you want to, quote unquote, get it into the hands of millions? Because that's going to determine how you write the book and what you say in the book. Are you writing the book, as an act of grace, or hopefully not as an act of revenge? There are books like Mommy Dearest, which was kind of an act of revenge. But an act of revenge generally will not sell very well. If there's somebody, if you don't like your wicked old stepmother, and you write the book, my wicked old stepmother was a witch. She was angry. She was ugly. She did this, she did that. She never liked me. She always tried to slap me in the face. The readers is going to say, I've had enough of this. I don't want it. You want to find, there's got to be a quality about that wicked old stepmother that may not be so bad. That may actually be good. And you want to get into their head, and you want to tell the reader, hey, I may have found her to be the wicked old stepmother, but there are certain things about her that caused my father to marry her. He didn't go out searching for the wicked old woman stepmother. He found somebody who made him happy, happier than he was with the first wife, most likely. What was that? What were those qualities? If you're going to write a memoir, you've got to kind of, get into your characters and develop them as best you can.
Sure. So as you're writing and recalling, here you are, your book is out. How is your book doing, by the way?
Average. It's doing well. It's doing well. It's won a lot of awards. So if you want to judge it by how many awards it's won, it's done extremely well. It's probably picked up, there were 3 or 4 first places that I got from, the Outstanding Creator Award and the Firebird Book Award, the American Writing Award. I got some first places out of them. And then a whole bunch of honorable mentions, recommendations, several second places. I think there was a third place in the Book Fest Award. And there are a lot of awards out there. It's not just the Pulitzer Prize or the Man Booker. A lot of these awards are not well known, but they exist. I just a week ago, it was named a top pick in the Author Shout Awards. A number of other books got top pick. I'd say about 24, but it was their highest rating. So I was happy about that. So in that respect, the book's done extremely well. And the reviews have been almost invariably good. The only bad review I got was somebody who said, I come from a broken home family and there was a lot of drama, and this book doesn't have any drama. It's too nice. Nothing really happens. It's bad. So what can you say? Although they thought it was a well-written book. So in that respect, it's done well. Number of sales, I rated absolutely average with the first book. Absolutely average. Still going along. Still, it's still alive, and there are still people buying it.
So it's called Every Other Weekend,
right?
And it was published February of 2023.
Correct.
Okay. And where can I'm assuming Amazon is a good place, and is it on audio? Because a lot of people that I talk to like audio.
I know, and I should do an audio, and I haven't. But I think I'm going to. I think I will. Yeah. I have to figure out what, who, and where. A number of people have said I should just narrate it myself, which I might end up doing. But in any case, Amazon sells the book. Barnes & Noble sells the book. IndieBound sells the book. I have my own website, anthonyjmohr.com. You go on there. The book's available. It'll link you into one of those bookstores, and you can get it. Barnes & Noble has it in certain bookstores. And if they don't have it, they'll order it for you. So that's the best way to get the book.
So it is awesome to talk to you, Tony, about, as an author to an author, being able to talk about our genres. How does our past influence us, and get to be a place of where we are. Out of all of this, Tony, when you think about the obstacles that you've overcome, the wins and the losses that you've had, if you were to do a TED Talk, so to speak, to a group of hurting blended families that are on the edge of that divorce, what would you tell them?
Well, when you say on the edge, they're going to have the divorce, they're going to separate.
Yeah, they're contemplating about divorcing because of their situation. What would your piece of advice would be?
Well, I would not advise them to stay together, just to stay together.
Right.
If the marriage is really bad, end it. But if you have kids, I think I said this in the last podcast, get the kid into therapy. Okay, that's job one, if you will. After that, pick up the pieces. Maybe you yourself should get into therapy. And then when you're ready, look for somebody else if you want to be married again. Maybe you don't. I know people who got a divorce and are delightfully happy not married. I know
at the same time, you were single for quite a while, and you were married at age 66. I mean, what was the change?
Right. The change was, I was having a ball going out on dates finally, after many, many false starts in high school. But, once I was out of college and law school, it was kind of fun being single in Southern California in the 1970s. It was probably the best decade in history to be single in the best place at the time on earth to be single. So I had no intention of getting married again. But after a while, I, got into several relationships which didn't go anywhere. And I still didn't want to get married. I had several close calls. I had several near-death experiences, if you will, and then finally met the right girl. And we both kind of backed into it. She had no intention. She had been divorced after a poisonous marriage, and she didn't want to get married again. I didn't want to get married. We saw each other. We saw each other a little more and a little more and a little more, and finally we realized, look, this is right.
Let's do it. Yeah. Did she have kids of her own?
No.
So no kids.
No. And we got married on about 24 hours notice. I mean, we thought about it, so I went down, we got a marriage license, and those things are good for 90 days in California. And finally, we decided to do it. So I called up one of my very close judge pals, and I said, what are you doing tomorrow at 4:30? Nothing. I said, want to handle a wedding. Whose? Ours. Went down to her chambers. A number of my other judge pals in the building showed up. They didn't know what they were coming for, other than we just said, please come to Judge White's chambers at 4:30 tomorrow. They showed up. What are you here for? Oh, we're getting married. And that's how we did it. It was a hoot. Best way I know to get married.
What a great way to end the story of happily ever after.
Right.
When we could tie it to this book. Tony, it's been a great pleasure in meeting with you and just really getting to know we're all human beings. And if we can have grace and patience with one another, so much more can be accomplished.
So true. So true, Steve.
So until next time, take care and God bless.
And thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship. For personal advice, please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.